Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. Good visual effects, bad visual effects, how it's aged. We're going to talk about it.
Welcome back to AsArt with Nick and John. We post 3 videos a week, so subscribe to get notified. John, I love how they use practical and visual effects in this film. They did such a good job.
I think it's no secret that that's what you and I prefer, is a good blend of the two. We always look at Lord of the Rings as the best example of that. But yeah, a huge amount of overlap between special and practical effects in these movies.
Yes, so before we jump into the practical and the visual effects stuff, even though this is kind of practical too, but let's talk about Dobby. Dobby's a huge visual effects, milestone that they reached, just like Smeagol, Gollum. And the cool thing that me and you both pointed out and we thought about was how it interacts with like the light and Harry. He's so interactive with the other characters compared to Smeagol. Even though Smeagol does interact near here and there, he'll like grab on the cloak and be like, "No, precious, don't go," kind of thing. But Dobby was so good. Like, Dobby doesn't need this. Dobby's gonna hit himself. Dobby. It's just so much fun to see it happen.
Well, it was a lot. I mean, Lord of the Rings has kind of either a rosy tone to it or it has a very blue tone to it. They're trying to make it more fantastical fantasy, right? Whereas, especially when he's in the original, like the real regular world of the Muggles and stuff, it's very regular lighting and things like that. And so, yeah, I mean, the lighting interaction, especially when he's hitting his face with the lamp, is perfectly spot on.
Yes,
and as we're finding out through all these movies, they're not cutting the visual effects artists any breaks whatsoever. It's all very, very difficult stuff they're handing them. But yeah, so I want to, you mind if I talk about a little bit of the history of like kind of CG characters?
Go for it.
So basically we had Jar Jar was the first main like character in a CG character in a movie. And Dobby's not in a whole movie, so maybe that's not quite going along the same thing. But he was a significant step forward because he does have subsurface scattering. So when bright light sources behind his ears, you can see through the veins and you see the light penetrating through. And even though he doesn't look, at least in my opinion, as strong as like a Smeagol Gollum character, that was the first movie, The Two Towers, that I looked at and said, wow, that's completely convincing, perfectly works. This is at a similar time period as that. But then again, for what he needed to be, kind of a more child-friendly elf. I think not elf, but he's a house elf? Is that what he's called?
Yes, very good, John.
Oh, shucks. But yes, I mean, in that regard, he worked really, really well. So just as a little bit of background. So I missed the second Harry Potter film for a lot of years. I had kind of picked up on the third movie and then saw the last number of movies. When I saw Deathly Hallows, I realized I had missed the Half-Blood Prince as well, so I was just completely missing so many story beats.
Do not watch the Harry Potter series like John watches them.
Yeah, no, do not do that. Because Dumbledore, they're getting the wand out of his grave. I'm like, what the hell happened to Dumbledore? And my girlfriend, she goes, she's like, oh, honey, you missed a movie. I was like,
Spoiler
what happened
alert.
to Dumbledore? Yeah, but so I saw Dobby at the end of Harry Potter in the Deathly Hallows, and he definitely, the technology behind him had advanced a lot. So when I came back and actually saw the second one, I was like, oh, he doesn't look nearly as good. But then you have to remember there was huge evolutions at that period of time. And I might have to put up this photo. I haven't told you this before, but students at the college I taught at the time, one of the students she goes, oh, doesn't John look like Dobby? I'm like, who the hell is Dobby? And I'm like, and then she showed me a picture. I'm like, I do not look like Dobby. So the next week she found a picture of me on Facebook and put it next to a picture of Dobby. I'm like, oh dear God, I look exactly like Dobby. So I'm going to have to find that photo. We can pop this up on the screen. It is hilarious. Cause like I was surprised so my eyes were big or something. And I was like, oh no, I look just like a house elf, but it was hilarious.
Yes. Good thing someone gave you a sock and now you have
yes, exactly. I'm wearing 2 of them right now. Yes. So yeah. So Dobby,
that's actually
I think
a thing
works fine.
In the books. Dobby gets like, he's like overload crazy on clothes. He like loves clothes so much he'll like mix and match and have like multiple hats stacked on his head, and he is just like hilarious. So into clothes because he's never had clothes, so he like loves it.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, he like he's all about it. But let's go into the practical and visual effects. Let's talk about the car because the car's first in the movie, and
it's in a lot of shots too.
It's in quite a bit. It's basically a character in this film. It's basically a character, and it's so much fun because Ron's dad, Mr. Weasley, he works in the Ministry of Magic, and he works with with like Muggle stuff. So he in the book he like takes apart the cars, he puts magic all into it, so he can go all out and everything like that. But man, they do such a good job. Well, I don't know if it's a good job, but they do the 3D car with the actual prop of the kids inside a real car, which is fun.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because if you look at the CG car, you're like, it looks like a car. It's not like the shader is off. It's not like there's compositing issues, but you can just tell it's a CG car. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it's kind of odd. You look at it, you're like, I couldn't tell you 100% certain why it looks a little bit off, but it does look a little bit off. Whereas when they cut to, and they do this often, which is cool, when they cut to a real car, you're like, all right, well, that's the real car, you know? Now, Nick, my question for you, when I was watching the shots with the CG cars, do you think they could have used, so in the original Star Wars, you guys, they used a motion control camera to actually get the movement around like the ships and stuff. And I'll explain why that is in a little bit. Do you think they could have used motion control for that? Or do you think that would have been even worse?
Maybe. I think it was easier to use a 3D car. Cause, because it has it like following the train, the shot in front of the train, and then like the train's chasing it. There's a lot. And then especially when it's going through the woods and it's in the tree. It's much more complicated than just like an X-wing kind of turning in space.
Yeah,
I feel
that's
like.
true. That's true. Yeah,
But,
that's true. So if you guys have no idea what we're talking about, do you want to give the breakdown of motion control camera this time around, or do you want me to? Okay.
No, it's all
so,
you.
Okay, so motion control camera, guys, was had been around before Star Wars, the 1977 Star Wars, but that technology was really brought back to prominence during that period of time. And basically, what it is, it's a base for a crane, like a camera crane, that's on tracks. And the crane and the camera and everything can be programmed by a computer. So it's basically something that just kind of goes through, and you can repeat that pass over and over. And that's how they got all the X-Wings and all the TIE fighters and the Millennium Falcon, whatever, in the shot, flying by at different angles, as they would just record them one by one, but they could repeat that camera over and over. And it's still used a lot these days, not even on visual effects movies. Like I remember on the movie Click with Adam Sandler, it was a comedy. There was a discussion they were having at the table, and they wanted to be able to get their pass. So even on a comedy, they did these passes with this motion control camera. Book of Eli is another great example where one of these days we'll have to talk about Book of Eli, but they use it a lot still. So anyway, that's motion control camera
And this movie really reminds me of Jurassic Park, because obviously we get later on to the snake, the battleless snake, and all that stuff like that, and the monster. But even the car in the tree, like that kind of reminds me of that whole sequence where they're escaping the dinosaur. I mean, obviously the tree's fighting them, but like the whole idea, like they're stuck in a car and all that stuff, and they're going down, and so much fun. What a great movie to reference to.
Well, and it's funny because you still hear Jurassic Park referenced a lot at the time, but you don't hear about it as much as you used to. But when I was in school, in grad school, which is around the time, a little bit after the Harry Potter started coming out, I don't think they had finished, but I remember seeing that people talking about that. They're like, oh yeah, Jurassic Park's the most influential film I ever saw for visual effects. And then when I was teaching, for a long, long time, Jurassic Park was the one I heard the most. So it's kind of fallen off a little bit, but for the most part, it's still a super influential film as far as people thinking about stuff. So really, really cool stuff.
It's so crazy, right? Like Jurassic Park, it's college years, all that stuff. Now it's like they basically ripped off Jurassic Park. Instead of a dinosaur, we have a snake.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know if that's what they were intending, because we had the car and then we had the snake, but either way, the effects, work great. The basilisk might be my favorite effect in the film.
They did such a good job. Like even when it comes to the close-ups, you know what I mean? Like, because the close-ups you can see like the saliva on the teeth and everything. It looks so sick. Like it looks so cool.
It's really, really cool. And already you're seeing, because we were talking about how I was a little bit. I didn't like the first two as much because they were very kid friendly, but already you're getting way darker stuff. You didn't have anything that dark or scary in the first one, because that's a pretty monster looking thing. I mean, you had a troll, but the troll looked like a fun little thing in the first movie. Whereas here, this basilisk isn't playing games,
And it looks good. Like it fits in well with the world and everything. The lighting was perfect on it. Like the 3D model matched it perfectly. It looked so good.
Yeah. Yeah, the 3D model shots look really, really good. There's a couple where it didn't make it look flawless, but the CG, like snakes, at least the ones that I'm thinking of, like notoriously look bad in movies, whereas this thing looked really, really good. And they did a really good job of like the T-Rex in Jurassic Park we keep talking about. It did a really good job of cutting back and forth between practical and visual, computer generated effects.
And it was so interesting.
It was in a lot of shots too.
Yeah, a lot of shots. And then it's so funny because like the dinosaur was wet because of the rain. The snake was wet because it came out of water too. So they were also dealing with like water particles. And
I didn't even think about that. Yeah, and that makes it trickier too. Yeah, that makes it way trickier.
Totally does. And what's cool too. Well, since we're talking about the scene, we can talk about Fox, the phoenix, how the phoenix comes flying in as a 3D bird, but then it's a little puppet. I guess it's a puppet, or it's a animatronic puppet or something next to him and like winking and stuff. And it was just so cool because you can see the details of the feathers and all that stuff like that. You can't beat stuff like that.
Did you like one more than the other? Did you like the CG version more than the practical, or vice versa?
I'm probably more a fan of the practical. Just because there's more detail and stuff.
I thought the CG worked perfectly, but then I thought the practical worked perfectly as well. I thought they looked a little bit different though. When you got really close up, it looked like it was a little bit different looking. But I love both of them, and that's honestly maybe one of my favorite effects in the films is the CG Phoenix, because it looked complete. You have simulations on the feathers for them ruffling in the wind, and then when a bird spreads its wings, you get that kind of animation. So they had to model all that. I don't even know how you rig something like that, but so. A lot of work. I mean, they really pulled out all the stops for effects near the end of the film between the basilisk and the phoenix. Really, really cool stuff.
Yeah. You know what's so interesting though is like you wouldn't be able to use a prop of a bird flying. It would have to be 3D.
No.
Especially with a magical creature, and even with the movement of the snake going down the hallway or whatever, and the way it's slithering around, or even when the fox fights, plucks out the eyes and all that stuff, like. You couldn't do that with props. There's like no way.
And that's a good point. Even if you had just a movie with a regular bird that you wanted flying around, you can't make sure it's going to fly in the way that you want or get the shot that you want, and you clearly can't follow the camera along with it. So yeah, I mean, I can't think of, is there a lot of movies where they had special effects of birds flying around before we got to the CG era, or could they even do that? I don't know.
Maybe it was just
maybe if they're static shots,
like
you could just
resting on someone's shoulder. That's like the best most we got.
Yeah. I never thought about that, but that's a very good point though. You literally could not do that before, I guess.
No, you would not be able to have this film without 3D. I
mean, no. But
unless they did like claymation.
How could you do feathers with claymation? That's be some clumpy feathers.
I don't know. Oh, wait.
He's molting. I'm molting. I'm molting.
What is it called? Is it the Clash of the Titans? Is that the
I haven't
classic
seen
one?
that. I have shots, but does it have birds in it?
It has a mechanical.
Or are you just talking about claymation?
It has like a golden bird or something like that. Like
yes.
Like wind up.
Golden bird. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
But it doesn't.
I need to watch
like
that. That's like a classic.
Feathers. It has gold feathers.
Oh, okay. So it's a bronze thing. Okay.
Yeah, it's like a bronze thing.
I need to watch that movie.
Can you think of any other? Oh, the spider. Oh, we forgot about the spider scene, dude. The spider. That's another one where they use a practical.
And by the way, John, I'm talking about myself in third person, is terrified of spiders, and the effect worked well because. I was like, oh God, especially when you saw all of them everywhere. I was like, God, like I was like Ron. I was like, Harry. I was freaking out. Yeah. So you go on and talk about it first, the main spider, and then also all the younger ones.
Yeah. So the main spider was an animatronic.
Mm-hmm.
The whole thing was, even when he came out of the little hole or whatever he lives in, his in a hole in the ground lived the spider instead of a hobbit.
They live in the ground too.
But it was just cool because like with the close-up shots and stuff, look great. The animation of the animatronic, maybe this is coming back to the point we brought up earlier, where if it was a 3D spider, you would be able to probably like have the cool
a little bit
things
more
going
articulation.
On. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Which is basically Shelob.
Yeah, so when he crawled, and I was a big fan of Shelob, and usually you and I like special effects when you can, like practical, and then we like CG only when you need it. But Shelob was all CG for the most part. Maybe some close-up shots. I can't remember, like extreme close-ups were practical, but Shelob worked great. But the lighting was different. The scenario was different. Whereas this spider, when it's crawling out, where you see the backside of it and you see the legs coming up, it looks a little bit like puppeteered, but it's a fantastical, mythical, huge spider. Like, okay, like for it to not look perfectly real, almost like claymation, it doesn't look perfectly real, but it still has this surreal kind of feel to it. But yeah, I really liked especially when you get close up, you see the glistening on the eyes of it, and I'm like, oh god, this got it.
But you know, like, think about it. These props really help the kids probably, because you know we had the kid actors.
Yeah.
It probably really helps them get into characters, like talking to a spider, talking to Phoenix the bird, having a snake you're kind of slashing a sword at and stuff like that. You know, it's probably really, really helpful to the child actors.
Yeah, and it's got to be. I don't know how it is in the state of the industry now, but I know that they're like when HBO with Golden Compass or His Dark Materials and things like that, they're trying to get away from just say, okay, here's 2 ping pong balls, look at those, and imagine you're seeing a phoenix. Well, okay, I guess. You know, I mean, I think they're realizing the interaction with the actors and having a reference is really important. That's why they kept to great expense as far as work by the digital artists, why they kept Andy Serkis as Gollum in the shots is because they just found the performances were so much better for Sean Astin and Elijah Wood when they had someone to interact with and actually talk to and get the eye line. And so you're right, having the Phoenix puppet, having the basilisk for the close-ups are probably hugely, hugely helpful. The only time I feel like that didn't happen in this film, and this is, again, we're getting Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, and Harry Potter all at the same time. The only time that this was felt a little bit off to me, and just like in the Star Wars prequels when they're fighting the droids with the lightsabers, is they're just swinging the lightsaber sticks, and you can tell there's nothing really there. They're just swinging. They don't even have an eye line. When Harry and Ron are swinging stuff at all the spider babies, as good as the spiders looked, you could tell that they were just kind of swinging. They're like, all right, just swing in this general direction. It's like Monty Python, I fart in your general direction. They're swinging in this general direction, and we'll add in the spiders later on. You know, I feel like that's probably what they were doing, which is still hard though, because if you're hitting something, it's flying off screen. You can't have a placeholder. Like, you know, how would you do that otherwise? But you can tell that they're not quite there and grounded in what they're doing. But
yeah,
I don't know the solution for that.
Which is interesting because you
really cool
can
stuff.
tell that the older actor, the guy that plays Lucius Malfoy, I think his name is, when he kicks Dobby off the stairs, you can tell it's more like planned with like placement where Dobby is and stuff like that.
Yeah,
you know, compared to just the kids swinging their lanterns at spiders.
Which makes sense. I mean, if you have a whole crowd of spiders that are coming at you, it's a lot easier to plan. Okay, Dobby's going to be here, but. Yeah, and in some cases, maybe they actually had a little fake Dobby doll that he kicked, and I don't know, you know, but it would make sense to get the weight of the kick in there to actually contact in something. I don't know, though.
And then let's talk about Moaning Myrtle in the bathroom. When the boys were in the girls' bathroom. Let's talk about this.
How dare you guys? Yeah. Harry Potter, you peeping Tom.
Peeping Potter.
Peeping Potter. That's even better. Peeping Potter.
But they did such a good job with the ghost and like the interaction of when Myrtle jumps into the toilet after she gets all pissed off and like the splash of the water, like it holds up amazing. Even though I'm guessing she was shot on a green screen. They luma key her and then they put a opacity or whatever transparency effect on her to kind of give that illusion of she's transparent.
Yeah, I mean, even if we just look beyond Moaning Myrtle or whatever her name is, all the ghosts, like the ghosts in the
Sir Headless Nick
in Hogwarts. Yeah, I love that. It just Monty Python. I can't not see that, but I love it's. They almost look like Force ghosts. They have this kind of bluish, kind of see-through effect. It's just really, really cool. And yeah, clearly they're on a blue screen or a green screen, and they put them on there. But I think you had pointed out when she hits the toilet, that's a combination of things. So probably with that extreme angle of her movement, and you had pointed this out and motion blur and everything, probably CG render of her. And then once she contacts the toilet bowl, and you don't see inside the toilet bowl, you just see her hit that, then they probably had it rigged to where the splash came out because that's practical. Really real looking water. But that's a perfect merger. That's how special effects and visual effects should be done. And that really goes to show like this is how you get the best result. Could they have done a crazy water simulation now? Yeah, maybe, but I still don't think it would look as good as a real thing because real is real.
Unless, you know, like we were saying though, unless it was doing something water physically can't do. like unless like
Yeah.
it splashes and they use a spell to have it freeze in midair or something like that.
Yeah,
Then
something like that.
you would use 3D or visual effects or something.
But
like
in
that.
the context of that shot, it works perfectly. Yeah.
And then let's end on what I think they did an amazing job on, the face morph.
Yes, yeah. So there's a few morphs in this movie in different contexts, and especially the face morphs. I can't think of any criticism whatsoever to say about them. Like, what did you think when you reviewed them?
You know, when I watched it, and then I watched it a couple times, I saw why it worked so well. The eyes. They waited to change Daniel Radcliffe's eyes until the very end. Like, that's the last thing that transfers over. And like, as us as humans, we look at eyes right away. Like first, that's like where we look on a face, and the eyes are Harry's eyes until the very end, and then they fade to brown. And I think that's just what made that shot work, because you know you'll kind of see the other stuff happening, but your main focus is still on the eyes. That's what I think helped that shot.
And so obviously these are effects artists that are doing this, but it's really, I don't know if the director would have any input of this or just visual effects supervisor, but you are guiding the eye. You're like, okay, look at this now, look at this now, look at this now. And this is not Harry Potter, but my favorite morph in a movie, aside from Willow, which was the very first morph. If you guys haven't seen Willow, definitely check that out. It's amazing. And they had to do that first time. They wrote the software.
Do you remember the scene with the morph?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Which one was it?
It's when, so the Shalindria is not Shalindria. So the main good sorceress woman, she's been trapped in an animal's body the whole movie.
Right. Okay.
And finally you get to the scene
the
where
raven,
she
right?
goes, yeah, she turns it from a raven to a goat to a tiger, you know, to all kinds of different animals. And that was puppetry mixed with CG morphing. And they were writing that software as they were going along. They're like, this is what we need to do. They showed the storyboards. They're like, we can't do this. And this guy just blindly coded his program for months. And then months later, they had their first successful test. But so in the morphs, so my favorite morph is from Interview with a Vampire. And it's when Claudia, young Kirsten Dunst, is going from being a dying human into like a healthy vampire. And it's guiding the eye to where you see the hair kind of growing back healthily, and then you see her cheeks changing, and you see the eyes, you know, and then at the end you see her teeth come in. But it's okay. Look at this now. Look at this now. Look at, because when you do a morph, you can have it just happen all at once, but it looks very artificial. It's like, okay, but when you do it segmented, like you're talking about, it works really, really well. That was a long explanation, but morphing is a cool thing. It's not used that much, but really, really cool.
And then we had two fun morphs during during the classroom scene, where they it's like a bird into a glass, and then a rat into a chalice or whatever they call it. I can't remember.
Rat into a chalice.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that was a little bit. I don't think that those looked as good as the faces, which you would think the faces have been harder. But then again, the rat cup was kind of more of a fun gag than looking for realism anyway.
Yeah, and you want to be able to do that unless you have visual effects, because the tail has to move and all that. I guess that could have been a puppet still, but
let's do a full practical effect. Let's just crunch a rat into it. Please don't do that.
But you know, we forgot to mention this earlier, but isn't it cool the way the car goes in and out of, you know, being invisible to like the visible cloak coming off? It really reminded me a lot of the Predator effect.
Yeah, so that's at least, so the Predator, when they did that, I think that's the first movie that people, whenever you see this cloaking thing, people think of Predator, the 1980s movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger, which is great for that. The context is perfect for that movie. Now you can do that really basically straightforward in any composing application like After Effects or Nuke or Fusion or anything like that. But and they did that with the invisibility cloak in the Sorcerer's Stone as well. It's just very, very quick. And basically you're taking whatever imagery, so the cape or the car, and you're turning on the black and white image, and you're saying, okay, these lighter areas where it's white, push the pixels in a certain direction. Where it's black, don't push the pixels. And that, through a funky enough way, gives you the outline or this idea of this thing being here, even though it's see-through. And yeah, it works great for the car. And it's just a quick thing, but it's really, really easy to do, and it works really, really well, huh?
If you're interested in learning how to do this, John has a Johnny How To channel. He breaks down visual effects shots and like how to do it behind the scenes kind of stuff. But it's more than just behind the scenes, because he gets in the programs, he rolls up his sleeves, and he shows you how to do it. It's great. It's a great channel if you're interested. His background is actually teaching visual effects in college, so this guy has a lot of knowledge. Take advantage of it if you're interested. Anyways, on that note.
Yeah, so it's more of a, if you just, I guess you could just skim through it if you're not interested in knowing all the things to do, like, 'cause it's a step-by-step thing. But yeah, if you really want to learn how to do the stuff, I'm using the software application Nuke in a lot of it, maybe After Effects in certain cases. But yeah, that's it. If you guys are interested in that, it's a little bit more hands-on than just like looking at breakdowns and things like that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, guys, so we post 3 times a week. Let us know if we missed any visual effects or special effects shots or your favorites that might have been in there. Nick and I are just kind of looking through the movies and saying, oh, this would be fun to talk about. This would be fun to talk about. And then we compile a list, but there could be a lot of stuff. And we like comparisons too. Like, hey, you were talking about Jurassic Park. What about here? You know, that type of stuff is really fun as well. So for all of our content, check out asart.space. You can find all the video and audio content there. Thank you very much for watching. We're going to be continuing this through all 8 of the Harry Potter movies. So check back and we'll see you in the next AsArt.